So in grade 9, I'm sitting there one day in socials class, and I had just begun high school. Do you remember what it was like to have just started high school? Some of you, it's more vivid and recent than it is for others. And me and all my friends sitting there in socials class, we were consumed by high school. High school was the whole world. What people thought of us, our friends sitting around us, what grades we were getting, what was happening in that place in my high school was everything. And so on that particular day, my socials teacher, looking out at a sea of grade 9 students consumed by high school, he said, "All right, everybody get up." And we're getting out of this classroom, and he marched us out of the classroom. And we thought, what in the world are we doing? We're supposed to be doing socials. Marches us out of the building. And we thought our socials teacher has lost it, but at least we don't have to do any socials. That's great. And then he marches us all the way out into the field. We go past the baseball fields. We go all the way out to the very corner of the property, the furthest point on that property from the building. So at this point, we're probably about half a kilometer from the high school building itself. And he takes us out. We're on like a corner with a stop sign, and we're looking. He says, "Turn around." And he has us turn and look at the school. And then he says, "It's just a school. It's just a school. It's not the whole world." And he gave us this speech that was all about perspective. And in the moment, I don't know if I got much out of it right in that moment, but it stuck with me. And it is a vivid memory for me to this day. I, like every other human being in the world, have a tendency to get stuck in whatever I'm doing and not see the bigger picture and not think about where I've been or where I'm going or if I'm even headed in the right direction. Just keep doing what I'm doing. That's where I was at in that moment in grade 9. And that's when my socials teacher pulled me out and gave me some perspective. So on this last Sunday of 2019, can you believe it's about to be the 20s? It's amazing. It's about to be the 20s. On this last Sunday of 2019, we are going to talk about perspective. Perspective just means looking around. The Latin words from which the word perspective comes from literally mean to look around. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start off by looking at the past year. Then we're going to talk about change and the need to be ready for change. Then we're going to talk about the purpose of my life. And finally, what would it look like if we were succeeding at the purpose of our lives? Step back a little bit, gain some perspective on life this morning as we move into 2020. So we can make sure that we're headed in the right direction. I've lost my remote control and I need it really badly. I really don't know where it is. Yes, thank you. Excellent. So reflecting on the year, why would we want to reflect on what has already happened? Wouldn't we just want to forget about it? Well, let me say a couple of things. This is a quote from Socrates. How many of you have ever read anything from Socrates? There's nothing by Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. What did he mean? He meant that unless we take the time to gain perspective, figure out why we're doing the things we're doing, and try to continually redirect our lives will simply go nowhere and not achieve any purpose, any worthwhile purpose. This is actually a similar point to one Jesus made many times that we'll come back to in a little while. Why would we want to look at the past? Because the unexamined life is actually not worth living. One more illustration for you. You must know where you've been to see where you are going. That's the first point for your notes. If you want to fill that in, you must know where you've been to see where you are going. And this is true in a couple of senses. It's true that I must know where I've been to figure out where the best place to go is. It's also true that I must know what's been happening in my life to see the trajectory that I'm on. If I keep going in the direction I'm going right now, where will I end up? And is it the right place? Is the way that things are going right now in my life going to lead me to where I want to be in the end? One more illustration for you. Here is a white dot. The white dot represents your life right now. Can you tell where the white dot is going? Where is it going? You don't know. You might be able to guess. It's just a white dot. You can't tell where it's going. But what if you could tell where it had been? Now, you could tell me where the white dot is going if it continued on the same path that it's been on. It would be going, of course, to the top right corner. Wow. So in order to know where you're going, you have to take a look at where you've been. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some pictures. Now, I'm going to encourage you to do this for your own life as well, but we can't do that for you right here this morning. We're going to do that for us as a church, Community of Hope Church. Where have we been in 2019? As we go through these, I will warn you that you might be in some of these pictures. And you're just going to have to deal with it if you are. Okay? 2019, where have we been? Here's one of the first things that opened up the year 2019. This was snow camp down in Washington State for the youth group. It was actually a powerful time. How many of you were there at snow camp? Can I hear you? I can't. Well, you were much louder at snow camp. Here are the people who were there to prove. There were also lots of people from other churches in Washington State there. I spoke at snow camp. We did Heroes of Faith. And we talked about how we can learn how to live our lives by the examples of people who have gone before us. We also made a cross out of tree branches with a machete. It was pretty great. We spent a lot of time this last year having meals together, having community group like we do every year. This is just a picture from my community group. I think this was the week that we were celebrating Roland and Adam's birthdays. I think that's what we were doing. There's a donut there with a candle in the center that they're about to blow out. But we spent a lot of time over this past year with each other, trying to get to know each other at a deeper level, a real level. Trying to help each other as we struggle and move forward in this life. And that's what community group is all about. Praying, helping each other take the next step forward. So we're going to continue doing that in 2020. That's something we did a lot of. Here's another picture of time spent around food in people's houses. This is something we do all the time. This was the progressive dinner that the youth group did, and some of you hosted that dinner this last year. I'll tell you what's funny about this dinner is that at this dinner, Ken McIntosh tried to get our youth all interested in Mr. Rogers. And the youth were like, Mr. Rogers, he's not cool. And now that there's a movie about Mr. Rogers, they're all like, oh, Mr. Rogers is so awesome. Ken, you were way ahead of your time. Well done. Well done. We ran, this is a sign that has our Discover Hope class and our Discover Hope Kids class. These are classes that we run to introduce people to the Bible and to Jesus. And we ran these classes. God enabled us to have people in these classes continually all throughout 2019, which was fantastic. Some of the people who were in these classes made decisions to follow Jesus for the first time in their lives. That was one of the best things of the year. We did a lot of different events, men's events and women's events this year. This one is not from the men's retreat. It's actually from a men's hike. But this one represents our men's ministry that happened this year. We had some amazing things happen. We had a wonderful retreat where we went away for a conference and we hung out at Pastor Jason's cabin. And this is from a hike that they took after that, I guess sometime during the summer. But really great things happened in 2019. as different men got together, listened to each other, listened to God, and then poured into each other's lives. We were encouraged, we were built up, we moved significantly closer to God. We actually saw several people take big steps in their hearts toward God. This was from preparing for our Easter egg hunt. We did a number of outreach events. You can imagine those are going to be up here. Those are the kinds of things that generate lots of pictures. This is us preparing to work together at that Easter egg hunt and just host many people from the community, many of whom at that Easter egg hunt never set foot in a church building for any other reason. But they did, and they heard some of the message of Jesus at that Easter egg hunt this year. This is a cool picture from the Easter egg hunt. And it kind of encapsulates the Easter egg hunt. There were so many people at it this year that really the theme for it was 1 egg per child, please. That was the theme. It was great. This was moving forward now into the summer. Our youth and some of the youth leaders went away to Momentum, which is a youth conference, and there's some mission trip activity that happened with that too. That was in Indiana this last summer. They went on a long flight to that, and that resulted in a lot of spiritual growth, as well as growth in the group and bonding. Here's another shot from Momentum as well, worshiping with thousands of other teenagers. Let me hear you if you were at Momentum. Again, the same 2 people weekly responded to my call for noise. This next one, Summer Fun at the Park, it's a big outreach event we had at Wade Road Park. Hundreds and hundreds of people came through, and we were able to bless them and connect with a few people in that way over the summer. Some people who served with us, helped us run it for the first time, are still here hanging out with us today, and that was wonderful to meet those people in that way. This is a great shot that shows kind of the spirit of Summer Fun at the Park. This is what it's like to be there. I also like it because Gail, who is normally a very strict rule follower, is not wearing her name tag, her lanyard around, and that just makes me smile. It just makes me smile, maybe even more than the smiles on their faces. Here's another shot from Summer Fun at the Park. This is the part where our summer interns were leading all these hundreds of children to the snack so that they didn't trample each other as they went to get donuts or whatever else we had on that day for a snack. Lots of different community sponsors on that day. This is a shot from Access, which was our national conference that a number of us went to down in Auburn, California. This is where we got together with lots of other churches that are part of our family of churches, and we all tried to, what is God leading us toward? Focus in the same direction, know each other, and build each other up. This is Zach and Carter and Dakota and some guy that you guys know, but I don't remember. What's his name? Nobody here knows? You guys knew then. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Cool guy from Pennsylvania. This is now fast forwarding toward the end of the summer. This is our Church at the Beach Day down at Blackie Spit. And that was a powerful day this year that really brought out into the open some of the things that had happened over this year. So here we have a picture of Adam about to be baptized, April and Taya. Let's hear a round of applause for them again. I don't know if you were there, if you could feel the power that was there in that moment. I expect that most of you could. There was a lot of power there in that moment. God was doing things that will have ramifications for a long time, in fact, forever. Here's another picture just of the other side. This is Chris and Jen about to be baptized. We also renewed their vows that day, which was very fun. And we also said, we'll get to that picture in a minute. Our summer interns, I already mentioned them with Summer Fun at the Park, but here's a couple more of them. So Dakota and Joel and Maddie and Tyler were our summer interns. They worked very hard. In fact, I think I worked them a little bit too hard this summer. Maybe one of my New Year's resolutions is not to try to kill our summer interns this next year. But I will work them hard, don't worry. This is a picture of them painting the gym. We did a number of things just to improve the facility and bless Faith Lutheran Church, who allows us to rent space from them. That's been a wonderful relationship. This is a picture of us saying goodbye to a bunch of people at the beach. This is some of our summer interns who were no longer going to be interns after that moment. So this is some people we were sending off either into, well, different kinds of new lives, whether to start school over at Great Commission Bible Institute in Toronto, or one person to go off and be married and leave us for California. Hopefully she'll come back. I don't have a lot of hope, but God can do anything. Okay? So that was a wonderful day, saying goodbye to them. All right, a few more things that happened. This is some of our Super Summer Supper socials. One of the ways that we got together and just hung out during the summer. This is in Pastor Jason's backyard. He usually hosts one toward the end of the summer, and I don't know, usually not as many people come to the end of summer ones as at the beginning. If you have kids, go to Pastor Jason's house for the Super Summer Supper Social. He's got like a fortress that he built in his backyard. That was a lot of fun, a way to stay connected and meet some new people. This picture is a little bit out of order. We connected with lots of different community organizations over the summer. And this is Evan delivering popcorn for summer fun at the park from Strawberry Hill Movie Theater, where we used to actually meet as a church. Look at those bags of popcorn. Do you think we finished those? Did we? Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. This is wrapping up the end of the summer. There was a youth camping trip that went on. That was again up at Pastor Jason's cabin. Moving into the fall, here's a picture of our youth group meeting in the fall. Our youth group continued on strong during that time, as well as our other ministries. Youth has more pictures up here than other things, just because people take pictures of youth more than they do of grown-ups. But that doesn't mean the grown-ups weren't doing things too. We started up all of our ministries for children's ministry and for adults in the fall as well. Again, this is a picture of some of our youth who stepped up as leaders, as a lot of our grade 12s went away this year, who had been leading things. Here's some who stepped up and took over. Catherine should be up here too, but I didn't have a picture with Catherine up leading the youth worship band. This is a picture of the ladies' retreat, which was, how many women went to that? It was like 21, something like that. I think we were trying to have a competition this year between the women and the men. For the men's retreat was in the spring, women's retreat was in October. Who would win getting more people? And you know what? I'm pretty sure, I'll have to go back and check the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was a dead tie. That's kind of sad. I was really hoping someone would win. But I'm pretty sure as it ended up, it was a dead tie. So we'll have to try again next year, see who can win. But the women all went away to Birch Bay and the Schrock's house, and they had a retreat and had a lot of teaching on the book of Ruth from some videos, and spent time in prayer, growing deeper. This was a powerful weekend. I encourage you, if you are a woman, that you would go to that this next year. That's something we need to continue. God's been doing a lot of things this year. Moving forward in the fall, here we have a bowling night. We've run a lot of events just to hang out with each other, bring friends too that we can get to know. And our bowling night was 80s themed. We don't always dress just like this, although it's not that far off. I guess 80s is coming back. Check this one out from bowling night. Boom, you know that one was coming. You know that one was coming. I think that's my last one. Oh, no, one more from the bowling night. We had a lot of fun at things like that as we just spend time growing in relationship with each other. Here's one from Christmas Dessert Theater. I took a picture because everyone was on their phones at the same time. I'm sure they were talking to each other, so they were spending time growing in relationship right there. Christmas Dessert Theater was a big focus for our church through the fall, and then, of course, around Christmas time, we came together. Amazing work that God did through us there. Here's a picture of the whole cast. One more round of applause for Christmas Dessert Theater. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. You know what? After Christmas Dessert Theater, the next time I met with Pastor Jason, we went to Starbucks, and I had a venti half-calf caramel macchiato, no whip. And I'd never had one before. It was delicious. It was delicious. So yeah, remembering the good times. We met some people who came to Christmas Dessert Theater. We also met some people who served with us at Christmas Dessert Theater. I got to know them much better throughout the year. The message of Christ was delivered in many ways through that play. And people heard it who would not have heard it in any other way. Praise God. Advent, people lighting candles, coming up to the front. That was a wonderful time. We also heard a lot of messages this year. Check this out. You heard messages from me, and me, and me, and Pastor Isaac, and Pastor Isaac, and Pastor Philip, who was there too. And Pastor Isaac, don't forget, you heard messages from me. And Dale. Dale got up, Dale Albertson delivered some messages this year. And you also heard messages from Pastor Isaac. And also from Pastor Jason. Yes, it was wonderful. And also from Pastor Isaac. Don't forget, you heard messages from me. And also you heard one from Tyler this year. And we will have some more from him coming up in the new year, so that's going to be an exciting thing. Now, what did we learn this year as we came, every week we came to this place and talked about the Bible? I wonder if you remember all of oh yeah, you heard from me. Don't forget about that. I wonder if you remember the different things we heard about this year. Our first series of messages as we went into 2019 was Heroes of Faith. We talked about that earlier. That was looking at heroes in the Bible and heroes throughout Christian history who can be examples for us and models of how we can live our life. After that, we did a series at Easter, The Rescue. We talked about all the different symbols, the symbolism of Easter, and how that points to Christ and what he did for us. Then we moved into a gospel series. Do you guys remember that? And we had the 4 symbols that we ended up using throughout the rest of the year. We talked about lots of different ways to share the message of Jesus in this series. The 4 simple points. I'll quiz you later to see if you remember them. You should have been sharing them all year. Then we talked about prayer. We did a short series, Discovering Prayer, just to refocus us on prayer. Praying together as a church, relying on God for help. In the summertime, we went into a series called Wisdom for Living, where we talked about, the way God has made the world, the way God has made the universe, and how if you go his way, things are going to go better. It's not always going to be easy or perfect, but things are going to go way better than if you try to go opposite to the way he made the world. We did a series around Thanksgiving on grateful meals and talked about communion as well. And then we did a series all the way through the fall called Sudden Life, where we looked in depth at the book of Mark in the Bible. We looked at the life of Jesus, what he did, and that was actually the most powerful series for me personally throughout the year. And then moving into Christmas, we did the arrival. Advent means the arrival, the coming of Christ, and we just finished that up last week and then on Christmas Eve. Moving into the new year, we'll be starting a series next week on the book of Ephesians. And we'll be in this letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to a church in Ephesus, but also to all churches, the church throughout all of history. A series on the book of Ephesians called The Grace-Fueled Life. It'll be focused on 2 ideas, which is what the book of Ephesians is focused on. Who are we? Who has God made us to be? Who has he called us to be? And because of that, how should we live? That's how the book is structured. We'll be going through that moving into the new year. All right? So there we go. That was the recap of the year. That's where we have been. Now, the other thing we need to keep in mind if we're talking about perspective is that while we need to remember the past, we need to look at it so we can know where we're going, if we're headed in the right direction, and where we should be headed. We also need to be prepared for change. We need to make sure that we do not get stuck in the things that we've done just because we've always done them. Now, that doesn't mean that we're looking at the past and saying, oh, everything in the past was bad. No, the things in the past, much of it was very good. But this is an essential teaching from the Bible. And if we look at the history of God's people, we can see it again and again that we have a tendency to get stuck in the same sorts of things that we've done and just do them again and again because we've always done them. Let's look at some scripture here, some of the Bible. So here is Mark chapter 2 and verse 22, and this is a quote from Jesus. Here's what he says. No one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, you have to pour new wine into new wineskins. Now, what's happened here in this moment in the book of Mark, which we just finished going through, is that Jesus is arguing with some of the religious people of his time, people who were called Pharisees. Now, these people did many good things, and in fact, their movement had started out as a renewal movement. We've got to get back to the Bible. We've got to get back to really following God the way he has asked us to follow him. And so in the beginning, their movement was very, very good. It was bringing many people back to God. But as time went on, they got stuck. They would add more and more rules. Well, to follow God, we've got to do this particular thing. And as they added these rules, the rules added up over time, and these rules became oppressive. And they became so focused on the particular ways that God had called them when they started their movement, that God had called them to follow him, that they couldn't see anything new that God was doing. And in fact, it got to the point where Jesus himself showed up, and most of them, at least in the beginning, missed it because they were too busy following the way that they had always done things. In the past, God had worked through them in a particular way. And so now they reasoned that they should always do those exact same things and never change. And because of that, they missed the new thing that God was doing. And this is a pattern over and over that the people of God have sadly repeated. God works in a particular way, and then we get stuck in it. And we're not able to see the new things. And because of that, what Jesus is saying to them at this moment is God could no longer work through their organization. He had to start something new in order to pour the new thing that God was doing. See, God is always doing new stuff. It's always focused in the same way, but God is infinitely creative. He is more creative than we can ever imagine. We will never find the limits of God's creativity. And the ways that he's worked in the past, he's always moving us in the same direction, toward himself, toward love, away from sin, away from evil, but he's always doing it in new and fresh ways. And in order to be following God and not just following our own ideas, we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're ready to change, not stuck in something just because it's the way we've always done it. Here's another scripture for you from Isaiah chapter 43. This is what the Lord says, the one who made a way through the sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out the chariots and the horses. So he did this amazing thing in the past. The army and reinforcements together, and they lay there never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. So he's remembering what God did in the past, in fact, through Moses in the Red Sea. And then here's what God says: forget the former things and do not dwell on the past. What? He doesn't mean completely forget them. He means don't get stuck there. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. The wild animals honor me, the jackals and the owls, because I provide water in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland, to give drink to my people, my chosen. The people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise. So God, who is infinitely creative, is always doing the same thing. He's always going the same place, but he is constantly doing it in new ways. And as we move forward into the future, it is essential we don't get stuck in what we've always done just because we've always done it. Second point for your notes: God is always doing something new. He's always doing something new. All right, here we go. Now we're going to talk about the purpose of my life, not mine, each of us. And I got an illustration for you and then some points from Jesus. There's a song by a band called 21 Pilots. Have any of you guys ever heard of them? Just a few, maybe, I don't know about everybody. They've got a song, and this song is a little bit obscure, so you're going to have to be a hardcore 21 Pilots nerd like me to know this song. Do any of you know the song March to the Sea? Anybody? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, nobody. Great. So I'm going to read you some lyrics from this song. And this song, the band, they are Christians, by the way. They are followers of Jesus. Not all of their songs are about God. This one in particular is, though it might not seem like it at the beginning. And this image is going to help us think about the song. So here's how the song goes. There's miles of land in front of us, and we're dying with every step we take. We're dying with every breath we make, and we all fall in line. A stranger's back is all I see. He's only a few steps in front of me, and I'll look left and right sometimes, but I'll fall in line. So I'll pause there for a minute. The image that's being painted is of a broad landscape. And here's this huge line of human beings, and they're just following each other. They're marching in a line. And they don't really look around them. They don't have perspective. And they don't even really know each other. In fact, they're distant. They're separated from each other in some deep way. The back of the person in front of them is all they really see. But all they do is follow the line. Let's carry on. No one looks up anymore. Listen to this. No one in the line looks up anymore. Because you might get a raindrop in your eye, and heaven forbid they see you cry, as we all fall in line. This lyric is my favorite in the entire song, because what's happening here is he's diagnosing two things. One, the wimpiness of our modern world. Nobody looks up anymore because it's too hard. Something might fall down and hit you in the eye. A raindrop, that'd be awful. And he also mixes it with this image of we're trying to protect ourselves and not let other people see the real struggles, deep feelings that we have. Heaven forbid they see you cry. We're all protecting ourselves from each other. But because no one looks up, no one sees God. About this time of every year, the line will go to the ocean pier and walk right off into the sea. And then we fall asleep. So now, once a year, the line is marching to the ocean and off of a cliff, off of a pier. I can only find a good image of a cliff, sorry. They walk right off a cliff and die. And so the whole life, you're just marching in this line, going with the flow, not really knowing even where you are or where you're going, and at the end you fall off a cliff and die. That's it. Now, one more line. If you want to know the whole rest of the song, you're going to have to go look it up, but here's one more line. Then out of the corner of my eye, I see a spaceship in the sky, and I hear a voice inside my head. It says, "Follow me instead." The spaceship represents God, something from out of this world. No one sees him anymore because they don't look up. But when he does and he finally turns, he immediately hears something telling him, "Follow me instead, get out of this line." Now, isn't that a weird thing to talk about? Is this anything like what Jesus says? Yep, this is exactly like what Jesus says. Let's check it out. Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 to 14. Jesus says this, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." What is the image that Jesus is using here? It's a very similar image. He's saying, here's what the world is like. The world is like a wide road with a lot of people walking down it. And they were born on the road, and everyone around them was just going down the road, and they never stopped to think about, where is this road going? Or am I on the right road? And so they just go with the flow. But here's the thing, Jesus says the flow, going with the flow, leads to destruction. Just going along the way life is, the way everybody does it, even though it seems to us like the normal way of life out there isn't so bad. Regular people don't have an awful life. They're not destined for destruction. That's not what Jesus says here. He says the regular way of life that seems to most people logical. It's just what I want to do. I had someone tell me this, had a gospel conversation just yesterday with someone, and they told me, I just kind of want to have a good life. I just want to go with the flow. The regular way of life leads to destruction. How can you avoid it? You must enter through the narrow gate. You must find the narrow road that leads to life. That means you must look for it. You got to look around, gain perspective, figure out where you are, figure out where the right place to go is, and actually try to get there. Now, you cannot possibly get there on your own, but that's okay because God has already done everything we need to get us there. He's done it all, but we must search for it, and we must choose to go there. The stuff you do, next point for your notes, only matters if it achieves the purpose of your life. You're going through this life, you're doing many things. You're working, you're meeting up with family, you're taking care of yourself, you're buying a house, you're taking care of your car, you're shopping, you're going on vacations. What does it all mean? If all of these things take you to the right place, if they move you to the place that you were made to go, then they all have eternal meaning and great significance. If they don't, then they are all meaningless and worse than meaningless. We must pause in our lives, and that's going to be my big push for today, to encourage you on your own, not just here today, but to pause at the end of the year and figure out, where am I and where am I going? Am I on track? And to ask God that question. We must do this so that we don't end up going the wrong way our whole life and then falling off the cliff into the ocean at the end. So what does it look like? What does it look like to be going the right direction? What does it look like if I was achieving the purpose of my life? Here's something we say a lot here at Community of Hope Church. We say that our purpose is helping people grow in their relationship with God and with each other. But to finish up today, I want to paint a picture of what that would look like. What would it look like if that were happening for you in your life? If in the year 2020 you grew in your relationship with God and with each other, what would then be true of your life that wasn't true before? What would we see happening if this happened in your life, and if it happened in the people around you? And we're going to go through several categories here. In fact, 6 categories. Growing how? Number 1. And all of these are fill in the blanks for your last point, by the way. Number 1, you would be growing in what we call fellowship. At the end of 2020, if you go the right way, you would have made progress by God's power in the area of fellowship. Now, that's a little bit of a funny word. I've also put community up here because fellowship is not a word we use all the time, but it's actually the only word that describes it just right. Think of the Fellowship of the Ring, I guess in Lord of the Rings, right? A group of people deeply united with each other, moving forward toward God and to achieve His purpose together. What would it look like if you grew in the area of fellowship in 2020? It would look like things like this. You would like other people more at the end of 2020 than you did at the start. You would genuinely like other people more. You would be more concerned with other people and what's happening with them than you are with yourself at the end of 2020. And you would be doing things as a result. Now, we can't say exactly what this would mean for you in terms of physical actions, because everybody's a little bit different. But it would mean things like you're part of a community group and you like it. It would mean things like you go to church and when you see other believers in Jesus, you would be excited that you get to see them. It would mean things like you're meeting up for people with coffee spontaneously, or going on hikes with other people because you want to, not because you have to. It would mean things like you are more of a genuine friend to your friends at the end of 2020. Growth in fellowship. Number 2, you would grow in the area of worship. These are different areas, categories that are describing actually Jesus, his character. The simple way to describe how would I grow the right way in 2020 is I'd become more like Jesus in 2020 on the inside. Not in terms of wearing robes and sandals, but on the inside I would become more like him. But these are all different areas, different categories that show us what he is like and give us pictures. If you were to grow the right way in 2020, at the end of this year, you would have grown in the area of worship. What does that mean? You would be holding your hands up more while Pastor Jason and the team are leading? Well, maybe. You guys could raise your hands if you want, but that depends on you and depends on what's going on in your heart. What it would mean is that you're living a life of worship, of joy and thanksgiving and praise to God authentically from who you are. I can tell you the kinds of things it looks like for me. It looks like this week I got really caught up on this song. It's a redone hymn by Stephen Curtis Chapman, Jesus' Firm Foundation. And I played it on repeat maybe 100 times over the last 3 or 4 days. And as I'm driving in my car, I have several times been overwhelmed with joy and devotion and thanksgiving to God to the point where I'm crying and I'm raising my hand in my car. That's part of what a life of worship looks like for me. Now, each person is very different, so it's going to look very different for each of us. For some of us, it might mean that I stick it out through something really tough, and I do it with some deep sense of joy because I'm doing it for God. For some of us, it's going to be connected to service, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. For some of us, it is going to be connected directly to worship in music and what we're talking about here. For others of us, it will mean I start to love the Bible instead of just doing it because I feel like I have to. A life of worship. Character. The next category is character. If you grow the right way in 2020, moving in the right direction toward God, you will be a person of deeper character by the end of that year. That will mean, another word for this is discipleship. That's a wider word, but describes this particular area. You will grow in the areas of truthfulness. You will be a more honest, authentic person by the end of the year. You will grow in areas of faithfulness. You will be a person who does what they say they're going to do more often. You will be a person who loves to, learns to love work more by the end of the year. You will be a person who's more courageous by the end of the year, less afraid. You will be a person who has less worries by the end of this year if you grow the right way. There's many more things we could say in the area of character. These are the kinds of things that are built, our classes that we teach, those classes that will be starting up in 2 Sundays from now. They are designed, they are not the only thing God uses, but they are designed to help us grow in some of these areas. In order to grow in these areas, you need to be deeply in the Word of God, reading it on your own, studying it, memorizing it, using it, growing in the area of character. Prayer is, of course, essential to all of these areas as well. One thing you would see if you were succeeding in this is that you would be praying about these things. Your prayer life would grow. Service is the next category. This can mean serving in the church, certainly, and we would want to see everyone who's part of our church family serving in some way because we need to have that fellowship and work together toward what God is calling us to do. But in general, this means that you would be a person who is gripped by the mission of Jesus, by the calling that he has placed on your life. Not that you would be doing it because you feel like you have to and it's this awful thing, but I make myself do it. No, you would be a person who wants to do it because you're gripped by it. You see the importance of the things God has called you to do. You know what gifts he's given you and what he has called you in particular to do. We talked about earlier, God is always doing a new thing. Did you know that you are a new thing that God is doing? He is so infinitely creative that there has never, ever in all of history been someone like you with your calling. Only you can do what God has asked you to do in the world. If you do not do it, if you do not do what he has called you to do in your life, it will not be done. Not in the way he intended it to. In the end, he will always achieve his purposes for the whole world, but the specific things in the specific way that he wanted to see come out of your life will not happen unless you do it. Unless you are willing. Unless you say, here I am, God. I want to serve you in the way you've asked me to. If you grow in the right way in 2020, you will grow in the area of service. And finally, evangelism. Reaching out to other people with the good news, the only message that gives life. The only thing that can break people out of that line, out of that broad road where everybody's just going with the flow straight to destruction. The message, the good news of Jesus. You will grow in your ability to play your part in delivering this message to the world. That will mean your relationships with your friends, the people God has put in your life, and it will mean the use of your gifts within the body of Christ, his church, so that the whole church can fulfill this purpose. Don't feel guilted by this. This looks different, just like all of these do. This looks different for each person, right? For some people, this looks like I wander around, meet strangers, and tell them about Jesus. But actually, it doesn't look like that most of the time for most of us. It looks different depending on just how God has made you. But if you grow the right way by the end of this year, you will want this more. You will want to see people being brought to life. You will see more where they are really stuck in a fruitless life that leads to death. And you will want to be part of God helping them move from death to life. So finally, this is the whole point. I think you guys have got all these filled in though, right? Growing how? Fellowship, worship, character, service, giving, and evangelism. So finally, I'll leave you with these couple of questions to challenge you and to help you as you finish up one year and move into the next. Will you take the time at the end of this year to truly reflect on your life over the past year? Will you take the time to really look around? What have I accomplished? What has God done through me? What have I done well? What do I need to improve? Where am I going the wrong way? What step is God calling me to take in this new year? And second, will you be ready for the new thing that God wants to do? He is always moving in us, wanting to do a new thing. We get stuck in the same thing. Don't assume that your 2020 is going to be just like your 2019. Please don't do that. Move forward. Take a step forward with God. Let's pray.